Okay, to finish up lesson 2.4 with writing the equations of the lines, we're going to start with a point slope form. So yesterday we talked about slope intercept form. Which is y equals mx plus b. And today we're going to talk about point slope form, which means that if they give you the slope of the line and a point, then I can find the equation of that line. And whenever we write equations of the line, 90% of the time or so, we always are going to put it, our final form is going to be slope intercept form. Sometimes they want it in standard form, which means that x and y would both be on the same side, but more often than not, we're going to write it in slope intercept form. So if we're given, anytime we're given 2 points, we can find the equation of the line using point slope form. The only thing is we need to find the slope first. So here we have a set of data, and they want us to find the equation of this line. So to use point slope form, we need 1 point and we need the slope. So how do I find the slope again? What do? Count the spaces on the graph. That would be one way. We don't have a graph though, we have a table. Count the spaces in the table? All right, Justin says graph it and count them. Okay, we could do that. All right, there's an easier way though. Okay. All right, so we're going to use the slope formula. M equals the change in y sub 2 over y sub 1, over the change in x. So, does it matter what 2 points I choose? It does not. Are there 2 points that you would rather use compared to any other points? Okay, so Natalie, which ones would you rather work with? The ones what? The ones that don't have decimals. Okay, good. That's probably what I would do. I would pick these 2 here and work with them because they don't have decimals. So my change in y then is going to be 1 minus negative 5. And then our change in x would be 8 minus negative 8. And once again, the reason I'm putting the positive 8, 1, that point first is because I want to make sure that my largest x value, I want to go first so that I always end up with a positive in the denominator. So when I find the slope here, we get 1 plus 5 is 6, and 8 plus 8 is 16. So then I will reduce that to 3 over 8. So there's our slope of our line. And so then we can use the point slope formula to find the equation of the line, and we'll put it in slope intercept form. So now I need 1 point from here. Does it matter which one of those 4 points I use in the point slope form? No, it doesn't. Okay, I could use any of the 4. Is there 1 point that might be easier to use than the others? Okay. Which one? Okay. In this case, I would probably use the point 8, 1 because they're both positive. Okay. So we have y minus, that means then that this is x sub 1 and this is y sub 1. And we're going to just leave x and y will stay, we will just use x and y as they are. We're not going to put anything in place of them. Okay. Ms. Coppernow, you might want to put that away. Okay, so y minus 1 is equal to the slope, which is 3/8, times x minus 8. The point that we use, we put them in place of x sub 1 and y sub 1. And then we're just going to simplify this in slope-intercept form. So we want to solve for y. Oops. And what's 3/8 times 8? Okay, all right, it's 3. Okay, we have an 8 in the numerator and an 8 in the denominator, so we multiply, those 8s will cancel out and we're left with 3. So then we have to add 1 to both sides. So we get y equals 3/8 x minus 2. And that would be the equation for our line. Now, is there a way I could check to make sure that that's correct? Okay, I could pick any other point then, put them in for x and y, and check to see if they're correct. Or, if you do have your calculator with you, you could do it with your calculator. You could put the equation of the line in your y equals. So y equals 3/8 x minus 2. And then I can go to the table and check my numbers. So at 8, I have 1 here. At positive 4, I have negative 0.5. Okay? So those match. If I go up to negative 4 is negative 3.5. Negative 8 is negative 5. Okay? So a way you could check it. So yes, take a point, stick it in there, see if it works. Or if you have your calculator, you could put it in your y equals and check the table. Or you could even check your graph also. And if I graph the line and I hit push trace, then I can pick an x value I want. So like if I pick the x value of 4 and I hit enter, then it'll give me negative 0.5. So I did it right. Okay. Or negative 8 is negative 5. Okay. So when you graph a line, if you hit the trace key, then you can put any x number you want in, and it'll give you the y value for it. So I want you to do just letter A. Okay, so we have an application problem here on entertainment. So it says the table shows the rent and selling prices of properties from a different game. And they want us to express the rent as a function of the selling price. So we need to find an equation for that. So what are we going to do to go about finding that? Okay, take 2 points and find the slope. So let's use the first two. 12 minus 9 over 90 minus 75. Okay, and that's 3 over 15, which is 1/5. Okay. So then we need to find the equation line then, we'll use that point slope formula. So I'm just going to use the first point. So y minus 9 equals 1/5 times x minus 75. Okay. And once again, it doesn't matter which one you use. What's 1/5 of 75? 15, are you sure? Did you do it on your calculator to make sure? Okay. So then we add 9 to both sides. So we get y equals 1/5 x minus 6. And so I'm actually going to write this as a function because it says express the rent as a function. So I'm going to use r to represent what? Rent. Okay, because we want to know the rent is a function of the selling price. So this would be 1/5 x minus 6. But I have to write a function, so that means I need to do r of x or f of x or something. And I'll use r because we're talking about rent. We could use p for price if we wanted to also, but usually a little easier to use x unless you're dealing with time or something like that. So then they want to know, all right, so you've got your function. It says graph the relationship between the selling price and the rent. How much is the rent for a property with a selling price of $230? There you go. So this would, we would want to make sure then that we use a graph that is going to incorporate these numbers here. Okay. So you'd want to make that graph large enough. Do I need any negative values? No. We're not going to get too specific on here. Okay. All right, but you're going to want to make a graph. But let's talk about just finding this value then. Okay. All right, you guys all know how to make graphs. So it's how much is the rent for a property with a selling price of $230? So what am I going to do with that $230? Where's it going? Okay, in for x. So r of 230 is equal to 1/5 times 230 minus 6. We're replacing the value of x with 230. So the amount of rent, if a selling price $230, would be what? How much? $40. Okay. Okay. Questions about those? About that one? All right, using their point slope formula to get there. and then writing out what it means. All right, last thing then is parallel and perpendicular lines. What's nice about parallel lines? Okay, they have the same slope. So if I know that two lines are parallel, then their slope is going to be the same. Okay? Makes it easy. Perpendicular lines make right angles. And so their slopes are what we call, they're the opposite reciprocal. So if I had the slope of one line was 5/4, the slope of the line that's perpendicular to it, okay, would be -4/5. They're the opposite. You change the signs, and then you take the reciprocal, so flip it over. Okay? So if I looked at these two lines right here, now their slopes are -3/2 x for the red one and +2/3 x for the blue one. We could actually figure out what both those slopes are by doing it the way Mr. Wright suggests, which is looking at the graphs and figuring it out from that, right, Justin? Okay. And so if I had specific points, I could see that for this blue one here, over 3 and up 2. So up 2 and over 3 would give me a 2/3 would be my slope. And for the red one, I'm going to go down 3 and over 2. So the blue one has a positive slope because it's going up to the right. The red one, which is perpendicular to it, is going down to the right, so it's negative. But what happens also? Their change in y and their change in x are switching. Okay? So one goes up, the other goes down, which is changes from the sign, and then their change in y and change of x switches. So that's why we've got opposite reciprocal for those slopes, which means we take the reciprocal, change the sign. All right, so let's look at one of each. Here they want us to write the equation in slope-intercept form for a line that is parallel to y equals 1.8x plus 3 and goes through the point 5,2. So since the lines are parallel, then my slopes are going to be the same. So my slope of my new line is going to be 1.8 also, the same as it is for the old line. Okay. The line is parallel to. So then I'm just going to use point slope formula to find the equation of the line parallel to that line. So we'll put in 2 for y1, 1.8 for the slope, and 5 for x1. And solve for y. Okay. So the line parallel to it that goes through the point 5,2 will be y equals 1.8x minus 7. Okay. Now the other thing you could do is, like Mr. Wright likes to graph it, and so you could actually graph the point 5,2 and use the slope 1.8, draw the line, and then figure out where the y-intercept is, right? Because the last thing we need to know is we know the slope, we need to find the y-intercept. So if we wanted to graph it and do that, we could do that, okay? The only one thing is our graph would have to be really accurate to make sure we get the correct y-intercept. So let's look at one where the lines are perpendicular. So here we want to know the equation of the line that's perpendicular to the line, y equals negative 3/2 x minus 1, and goes through the point 9, negative 2. So the slope of this line is negative 3/2. So the slope of my perpendicular line, okay, all right, we use this little symbol here for perpendicular. So if you want to do that, you can. Okay. So what's the slope of the line that's perpendicular to it? Nolan, what is it?
It's the reciprocal, the opposite.
So what would it be? Positive or negative? Positive. Okay. Positive 2/3. Okay. We change the sign, take the reciprocal. So I use my point and my slope in point slope form to find the equation of that line that's perpendicular. So this whole thing of today using the point slope formula. So you should know slope intercept form, how to find the slope, and point slope form from each of these problems in this lesson. Any questions?